Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. And in this video, we'll be talking about something quite different than what our usual topic is. I know I usually say that I'm not usually focused on PvE, but in terms of right now, in terms of what people are doing right now, there's a lot of PvE question. There is a reason to this because the next thing that we gotta gear up for is legendary gear. And the only way to pretty much obtain legendary gear is pretty much through PvE, which is raid. So a lot of people have been going around and trying to chase on whatever the PvE build is and what is the best PvE rotation. So I've got a lot of comments asking and a lot of DMs asking me on basically how to PvE and what's the build, what's the skill rotation looking like. So yeah, in this video, we'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about everything, mastery, artifacts, and all that. So let's just jump right into it. Before we start though, if you guys enjoy the content, if you guys like this kind of video, I'll appreciate if you guys subscribe. Every single one of you who subscribe, I'm really thankful for y'all. So yeah, if you haven't know already, I also stream on Twitch, pretty much usually on the weekdays. So if you have some times and if you got any question and you want me to answer it really quick, just hop onto Twitch and I usually answer it pretty quick on my Twitch stream. So yeah, all right, let's just jump right into the video. So first of all, let's talk about gear. So right now, this is what I'm currently running. So pretty much basically what you want to run, ideally you want to run 2-piece Imperial and 2-piece Void. I would say right now as of current patch, this is the current best gear to run for in terms of like the most PvE damage, because Void gives you the 20 max damage and Imperial pretty much gives you the crit damage, because without even any gear, you're pretty much going to be having a lot of crit anyway. So you're going to be critting them no matter what. So you don't really need to build like a Transcendent or something like that, because they're just going to crit with normal gears because of how stat works and how high is it right now in the current game. So pretty much what you want to push for is heavy attack. You want to basically drop every hit, and the only thing that you need to push for is also dexterity and wisdom. There is a reason why you want to push this. Every time you take a look at this, if you try to push dexterity, it always gives only the max damage, which is pretty much the damage that we kind of are looking for. If you take a look at it, every time I push the dexterity, the higher it goes, the higher the max damage goes. But for min damage or base damage, it's not going to go up as much. So by this logic, you pretty much just want to keep on pushing dexterity, because you were aiming to do that a lot of damage on crit and only crit. So we're just trying to push dexterity. Same thing can be said with wisdom. If you take a look at wisdom, if you put it down and you kind of pushed it, it only pushes the max damage. So that's why you always want to push these two stats as high as you can. And then the other thing, dexterity naturally gives you crit and attack speed, which is pretty good. And wisdom naturally gives you cooldown speed, mana regen, and max damage, which is all the thing that you need for PvE. The higher your cooldown speed, the more rotation you're going to pull off. And if you have spare points, you pretty much just want to put it on strength, so you can push it to 80. Because strengths also increase max damage, but not as much as dexterity and wisdom. And it also gives you like a heavy attack when you have 80 strength, so it's pretty good. The more HP on Gladiator you have, the more your skill damage boost is too. So that's also like a thing that you got to keep in mind. Gear wise, this is what I have, this is what I'm running. But ideally, what I want to run is pretty much this one right here. If you take a look at the build right here, I pretty much have a PvE build on my quest log right now. If you haven't already, check it on the description down below in the video. But yeah, I do have the legendary setup. This is pretty much, you don't really need like exactly as this, but if you want to play around, you play around with this, pretty much this build. And the max damage, if you take a look at it, we have like over 1,000 max damage. If you take a look at the Greatsword, we also have like 994. This is with quality stellarite, by the way, so keep that in mind. But yeah, because we do have a lot of damage between the both, we pretty much just want to have like a high base damage on the spear. The reason why I chose spear over Greatsword is because the attack speed is kind of good for PvE. And also, if you take a look at the base damage difference, it's way more. It's 41 and 111 on the max damage, which is pretty high. On the Greatsword, it does make a lot of difference too. But again, Naru as a Greatsword, it's really good because first of all, the passive is really good. It's just the best PvE Greatsword in the game right now. Second, the stat that you get from it, you got Strength, Wisdom, and Dexterity, which is Wisdom and Dexterity is really huge, and Strength is really huge too. So pretty much this is equal to Tevent, but better with Wisdom in terms of PvE. And then also the damage, they are pretty much the same damage with Tevent. So this is an equal amount of damage as an Archboss weapon. So it's pretty it's a really good greatsword in terms of like the amount of like value you get for PvE on it. So this is just Biz. And then pretty much for cape, you don't want to run the legendary cape for PvE. You want to run the legendary headgear. Reason is because it gives you cooldown speed, it gives you wisdom, and pretty much it also gives you like dexterity on the heroic effects. And it also gives you like cooldown speed and mana cost efficiency and all that, all the good stuff. So it's pretty much like you kind of want to run this on PvE gear. Yes, there's a lot of other combination, but again, if you have some other combination, you're fine to run that too. This is just a template that you can run with. And pretty much if you want to edit some templates for all that, you can pretty much edit it from my quest log if you wanted to. You can clone it and all that. So this is just a pretty good like beginning like understanding of PvE if you want to take a look at it. So that's about it. Let's talk about the artifacts next. For artifact setup, this is pretty much what I will recommend to run. You pretty much want to run 4 Chaos Harbinger, and I find it really good if you want to run this Abyssal Beast Lunar Stone, because every time you do a control skill, the next 3 seconds, your base damage is going to increase by 4%, which is really huge. Base damage by this, it means the min damage and max damage. So it's a really good damage increase for both of your base damage. In terms of like overall damage, it does a lot of damage with basically every time you do a control skill. And then the second part of the Solar Stone, you pretty much just want to run this green one. It gives you 22 base damage for 10 seconds. And remember, the base damage scales with Cellerite, so overall, when you pop this, it's the best artifacts for PvE. So you pretty much just want to run 2 off pieces and 4 Chaos Harbinger because the 9% crit damage is just really valuable on that. So that is what my current artifacts is running. So it's pretty good that way. Now let's talk about Mastery. In Mastery, this is pretty much what the Mastery set I'm running for PvE. All you want to do is pretty much you want to go all attack and all to support node. Pretty much there is a lot of support node that you kind of like wanted to go for, and for spear is the same thing. Pretty much you want to go attack and support node. So pretty much all the support node aside from hit, you take every single one of them. If there is hit, you pretty much don't take hit. Critical damage is needed. Ignite damage is pretty good. Attack speed is pretty good. The reason why I take this was just because of the attack speed, but if you don't want to take this too, that's fine. This is because I have like a lot of mastery points, so I kind of take everything that I needed for PvE. So you want the crit, you want the heavy, you want the skill damage boost, and as for support, you kind of want range too. But just be careful to not take this passive, because this actually nerfs your damage if you take this support passives on spear. So you pretty much just don't want to like turn this on pretty much, and you always want to take the stat points. It gives you base damage, which is kind of good, so you kind of want to take this anyway. But I mean, it's not a prio, so you can kind of ignore it for PvE mastery. As for Greatsword, the same thing. The reason why I go for Blade Harvest was because of the amount of sustain that you can get. So you don't really need to rely for your healer a lot of the times when you use precision dash, because you can just lifesteal yourself like in a lot of times anyway. So this is just a really good PvE spec that you kind of want to go for, and you kind of want the lifesteal from Dauntless Recovery, and you kind of pretty much want to go for all the attack. Note on Greatsword, damage boost is good, heavy attack is good, and critical equilibrium is probably the best passives out there for mastery. It gives you crit damage, which you need as long as you have your health below above 50%. This is why you want Blade Harvest as well, because pretty much with Blade Harvest and Dauntless Recovery, you're pretty much always going to be at 100%, and you pretty much need that for the Greatsword passive to proc. So overall, you don't want to take the hit chance. Like, I always leave the hit chance open, but every single crit I took, and the buff duration is pretty good too. And for Greatsword, you do have this interesting passive, which gives you a damage boost. So I would say this is a pretty good passive, and you kind of want to take this. It gives you 19.2, which is pretty good. So always take this passive for PvE. And yeah, buff duration is pretty good. Every single one of the support and attack node you kind of want to take. All defensive nodes are kind of useless for PvE. All the tactics node are kind of useless too. So you don't really want to put any points in that aside from attack speed on Greatsword. But other than that, this is pretty much what you want to running. For mastery skills, you want to run potential. It's always good. Gives you stat. Everyone needs it. You want to run Deadly Viper. Deadly Viper is pretty good. I mean, there's a debate when you can go like Time Bomb too. It really varies. You can run this, but this is pretty much what I'm running right now. So yeah, that's it for mastery. Next, let's talk about skills. This is pretty much the skills that I'm currently running on Greatsword Spear for bossing. Yes, I do adjust it sometime if my party needed Blood Devo or something like that. I usually remove my Gaia Crush for that. But aside for passives, this is pretty much the passive that you want to run. You don't really want to run the Malice Surge because you don't get hit as much, so it's not gonna proc you that much. Raging Frenzy is really good, but the problem is if there is a boss that's only like one boss, pretty much don't spawn any other mob, like you're kind of griefing a passive slot, so you don't really want to run it. So I do run this. Yes, Cold Warrior, I have no idea if this is working out, but if it can apply shock with Greatsword skills, then I'll still take it anyway, because in the end of the day, shock gives you a lot of damage in your skills. Like Guillotine does more damage when the enemies are shocked. Phoenix Barrage does more damage when the enemies are shocked. Death Blow are the same thing as well. So you pretty much just want to run this because of that reason. And the other reason too is just all the other passive are kind of useless, so you don't really want to run any of the other passive. So pretty much you want to run this kind of setup. Skill damage boost is good, critical damage is good, Mortal Rat is just good. A lot of bonus damage when the enemies are below 30%. For the Q block, you want to run Patient Block instead of the Greatsword. There is a reason to this. If you take a look at the mastery on Spear, you do have Repulsive Force, so every time you Q block, it puts your Spear skill on cooldown by 3 seconds. That's every time you Q block. So in the end of the day, it's just a really good, it's just a cooldown reduction button that you kind of really want to run it. And for skill wise, this is pretty much what I'm running. I'll explain the skill and skill rotation in a bit. Yes, you can run Precision Dash for Will Breaker, but I don't recommend it for Raid because, again, you kind of need mobility and you kind of need life steal anyway. So you pretty much just want to run Precision Dash. But this is pretty much what I'm running aside for the spec points. If you want to take a look at it, here you go. Here's my Spear passive specialization for Spear 2. But yeah, you can adjust this in any way, shape, or form. But if you just want to copy paste it, here you go. So here are some of the tips that you want to use and you want to do before you get into your PvE rotation, or that if you're trying to make one. So the first rule is always going to be apply stun and apply shock before the big skills like the Phoenix Barrage, Death Blow, and Guillotine. So make sure you always apply shock because these skills, if you have shock on the enemy, they tend to do more damage. So just make sure before you do the big skills, pretty sure always apply shock on the enemy, so you can always max your damage. And the second tips that I want to give is if you want to min-max your damage, try your best to proc the passive consistently. It's really hard though. So this passive called Retaliatory Strike, it's really hard to proc because you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 4th hit, it's gonna do more damage because it gives you more crit damage on the mastery passive. But the hard thing is, after the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rotation, you need to do it on the 3rd skill after that, because it doesn't apply on the 4th. It only applies on the 4th if you are not in your rotation. It's really hard to explain it, but basically you can try it out and you can see how it's really hard to explain it by words. But basically they count your 4th hit as the first hit for the next rotation, so it kind of fucks up a lot of rotation, and it's really hard to consistently proc it because like the amount of cooldown that we pretty much have. So it's just really hard to stay on top of it, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, you can experiment this with yourself, and if you can proc it consistently, you're gonna do more damage for sure. All right, and then before you do Rising Slash, make sure you apply Weaken Ignite and Burst on enemies in order to proc max damage on the second swing. So make sure you apply Ignite and Burst before you do your second slash of Rising Slash. And how do you get this Ignite and Burst? There's 2 skills that give it in my PvE set, which is the Phoenix Barrage for Ignite and Culling Arc for Burst. So make sure you apply those 2 skills before you do your second burst of Rising Slash. And then the next step is before you use Brutal Fury, you want to make sure to use Culling Arc. The reason to this is so you can proc your Brutal Fury more than once. You can proc it up to 3 times or 4 times actually. It depends on the specialization that you take, but there's a lot of damage in Brutal Fury if you use it correctly. If you don't have Culling Arc before you use Brutal Fury, then what will happen is you can only trigger Brutal Fury once. So you don't really want to do that. You want to make sure you can hit multiple times of Brutal Fury. The next tips is to make sure to hit the boss from the side or back so you can trigger Mortal Rat. Mortal Rat is a lot of damage, especially if you take the mastery. And then if you combine with like skills like Brutal Fury, where you can trigger up to 4 times, you can actually get 4 procs of Mortal Rat if you're lucky enough. But if the boss's HP is below 30%, then you pretty much are guaranteed to proc Mortal Rat. So this is just a really good skill, and it's really a lot of additional damage, especially if the boss is below 3%. I'm pretty sure you want to take this and you want to use this passives to its fullest, because each passive's additional damage is about like 3k, and it can be 4k, and it can be times 2. So it's a really huge chunk amount of damage that you're going to be losing if you don't run this properly. So yeah, I'll play the rest of the clip by showing you how to do the DPS. But It is not my ideal rotation. I fucked up some of the rotation here, but I'll just leave it as it is. And I appreciate you guys all watching. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Don't forget to like the video. All right, see ya. Bye-bye.